My grandson said I was useless because I didn't know how to use a smartphone. I just laughed and asked him to Google my name. The room went silent as my face appeared on the screen. My name is Walter Brooks, but most people just call me Walt. I am 72 years old. I walk a little slow now. I talk soft. I like my coffee with too much cream and my toast a little burnt. I wear the same old blue cap that my late wife, Linda, bought me from a gas station on our last road trip together. If you saw me on the street, you would think, there goes a regular grandpa. You would not be wrong. I fix squeaky doors with a drop of oil. I feed the robins in my backyard. I keep a little box of screws and nails sorted by size in my shed because neat things calm my heart. I also carry a flip phone. It is gray, with a tiny screen. It rings like a toy and takes pictures that look like fog. My grandson, Tyler, laughs at it every time he visits. "Grandpa, this is from the dinosaur age," he says, and I just smile. I like simple things that do the job. The flip phone calls who I need and lets me in the day without a screen shining at me from the nightstand. In my house, it is quiet at night. You can hear the refrigerator hum and the clock tick. I sleep well in that small, honest sound. But this story is not about a flip phone. It is about a room full of people who thought a man was useless because he didn't know how to swipe left or right. It was a Sunday afternoon in Ohio, the kind of day where the sky is bright, but the air is cold enough to make your hands hide in your pockets. We were all at my son Mark's place for lunch. My son, my daughter-in-law Susan, my grandson Tyler, and two of Tyler's friends from school who were there to work on a project. Pizza boxes were stacked on the counter. A football game murmured in the background. Phones were everywhere like shining little mirrors. I sat at the end of the table, warming my fingers around a mug of coffee and trying to stay small. That is my trick when the room fills with fast words and fast laughs. Go small, listen more than you talk, smile when it's kind to smile. They were showing each other something on their smartphones. Tyler poked a screen, slid a finger, and a cartoon dog danced across the table in pretend 3D. Everyone laughed. He turned the phone toward me, eyes bright with a kind of bold, young fire. "Grandpa, try this," he said. "Make the dog jump. Come on." I held the phone. It was heavier than I expected, warm from his hand. I pressed my finger and nothing happened. I pressed again. The dog flickered and froze. Tyler snorted. His friends tried not to, but the laugh was there anyway, like a small sharp thing. He took the phone back from me with 2 fingers, like I might drop it. "Never mind," he said. "He doesn't even know the basics." He turned to his friends. "Grandpa is kind of useless with tech. He still carries a flip phone." That word, useless, landed on the table like a rock. It rolled across the wood and stopped at my cup. I felt it hit my chest, and then settle somewhere deep where old hurts sleep. I could have said 100 things in that moment. I could have scolded him. I could have told him he was rude. I could have looked at my son, his father, and asked him to correct his boy. But I have learned that the strongest hand is sometimes the open one. So I did what I do when people forget their manners. I breathed in. I breathed out. And I laughed, just a little, the way you laugh when somebody thinks they see the whole house, but they've only looked at the front door. "Tyler," I said softly, "do me a favor." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Google my name," I said. "Right now? Just type it in." He rolled his eyes. Susan gave a small, tired shake of her head like she expected another old man story about walking uphill both ways in the snow. Mark looked at me with a face that said, "Please don't start something." I kept my smile. I did not feel angry. I felt steady, the way the floor feels steady under your feet when a storm is outside. Tyler lifted his phone with a grin, thumbs quick. "Okay, Grandpa. Walter. Brooks. There. Happy." He turned the phone toward me and toward the whole table. The room went quiet. On the screen was my face. Not a selfie. Not a family photo. My face was on a news article from years ago. Then another, from a different city. Then a video clip with a big headline. "The quiet mind behind the map." There was a picture of me younger, hair darker, eyes sharp. There were words like patent, algorithm, federal hearing, non-disclosure, whistleblower, and settlement sealed by court. No one said a word. The football game kept murmuring from the living room like a faraway river. The pizza smell suddenly felt too strong. Tyler's fingers trembled just a little as the video auto-loaded and a reporter's voice, slow and serious, said, "In a case that shaped the way smartphones use location data." And then, knock, knock, knock. 2 short knocks and 1 long, hard one. Not polite, not scared. The kind of knock that says, "We are here, and we expect you to open." Everyone jumped. My coffee trembled in my hand, and a dark ring rippled across the surface. Tyler's friends looked at each other with wide eyes. Susan put a hand on her chest. Mark turned toward the door. I placed my cup down carefully and stood up, my knees stiff but willing. In the silent second before the next knock, I looked at my grandson. His face was pale now, the brave, joking tone gone. He was a good boy. He just forgot how easy it is to bruise a person with one careless word. "I'll get it," I said. The knock came again, hard, impatient. And that is where I will leave that moment hanging for a breath, like a picture frame on a nail. Because to understand that knock, you have to know how we got here. That morning had begun with the squeak of the bus brakes and the soft thump of my old shoes on the curb in front of Mark's house. I like to take the bus even when someone offers to drive me. Buses have a slow rhythm. Someone laughs, someone yawns, someone hums to the music in their head. You see faces that remind you the world is big and most people are just trying to get through the day. It keeps me gentle. I had brought a small wooden box with me, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Inside was a chess set I had carved for Tyler. Each piece had little stories scratched on the bottom in pencil. The king was courage, the queen was patience, the rook was home, the bishop was wisdom, the knight was loyalty, and every pawn was steps. I made it in the evenings when the house was quiet because I wanted him to have something steady to touch when the world felt loud. I knew he liked phone games and fast videos. I thought maybe he might also like something slow where every move meant something. The front door was unlocked, like it always was on Sundays. I walked in, wiped my shoes on the mat, and set the box down on the entry table between a bowl of keys and a stack of unopened mail. I could hear voices in the kitchen. I heard a laugh that sounded like Susan. I heard Mark's lower voice, careful and tired. I heard Tyler's fast words like pebbles skipping across a pond. I was about to call out, "It's me," but then I heard my name. When you hear your own name in a house, you stay very still without meaning to. It's a human thing, a little deer feeling that says, "Wait, listen, make sure the field is safe." I'm just saying, Susan's voice, hushed but sharp, "We can't keep doing this. He needs help. He can't even open a file on email. He called me last week to ask how to plug in a printer. He just needs time," Mark said. "He's doing okay. He's grieving still." "It's been years, Mark," she said. "And the house, what are we doing about it? It's too big for him to live there alone. Do you want to wait until he falls and breaks a hip? Tyler needs a laptop for his coding camp. We could sell the house and—" "We're not taking Dad's house," Mark said, and I felt a warm, small fire in my chest at that. "I already told you." Susan sighed, the kind of sigh that says this is not over. "Fine, but at least talk to him about moving to the condo near us. He'll be close to help. He'll be close to us. That condo is a step between home and a nursing home," Mark said. "He's not ready." "You always say he's not ready," she said. "He needs to be pushed. He needs to catch up. He refuses to learn the basics. Tyler is embarrassed to have friends over because his grandpa. Mark, he tells them you won't let him have the newest phone, but then sees a flip phone on the table. It makes us look." "Enough," Mark said, voice tight. "He's my father." I stood very still in the doorway. A bird chirped somewhere outside. The mail on the table smelled faintly like ink and dust. My hands felt cold suddenly, even though the house was warm. Betrayal is a big word, and it wears many faces. Sometimes it looks like a lie on purpose. Sometimes it looks like money moving in the dark. And sometimes it looks like people you love talking about you as if you were not a person at all, as if you were a heavy couch that needs to be moved to make the room look nicer. I am not angry with my family for having that talk. People plan what they think is best. People get scared of age and sickness and money and how quick the days go. But I will tell you the truth. The word embarrassed stung like a wasp. Not because I care what a neighbor thinks, but because it meant my grandson was carrying shame where he should carry pride. He did not know my story. That is my fault as much as anyone's. I hid too well. I stayed quiet too long. I picked up the wooden box and walked into the kitchen with a smile like sunlight, the way you bring cake into a room even if your heart is heavy. "Morning," I said. They flinched like I was a ghost. Then everyone spoke at once. "Hey, Dad." "Hi, Mr. Brooks." "Grandpa." Tyler jumped up and took the box from me. "What is this?" "A game," I said. "One that makes you think." A chess set, he said when he opened it. His voice changed to that flat teenager tone that means this is not a new iPhone. He nodded. Cool. Thanks. He set it down beside the pizza boxes and did not turn any of the pieces over to read the small words I wrote by hand. We ate. We talked about the weather and the football game and the neighbor's new dog that barks like it is singing. The mood lightened. My chest loosened. Then the talk turned to phones and apps and the dancing dog filter, and we wound our way back to the place where this story began. Grandpa is kind of useless with tech, Tyler said, laughing with his friends. I felt that word again and knew it was time to stop being a picture frame on the wall. Some people learn with rules. Some people learn with stories. The rest of us learn when life opens a window and the fresh air hits our face. I decided to open that window. Do me a favor, I said. Google my name. You already know what they saw. What you don't know is why. A long time ago, back when screens were thick and heavy and the internet hissed like a snake when you connected, I worked in maps. Not the paper kind that fold and rip and make you curse when you take a wrong turn. I worked on the kind that live inside machines. I wrote little lines of math that helped phones know where they are without sucking every drop of a battery dry. I wrote other little lines of math that made all those dots on a map move smooth when you zoomed in or out. It took me years. I made a mistake 100 times until I made a small thing right once. That is the work. That is always the work. Then a big company wanted what I built. There were contracts. There were meetings with 2 cold coffee and 2 bright lights. There were smiles that felt kind but had teeth behind them. I signed a paper to license my work for 1 use. They used it for 10. I told them they could not. They said I was confused. I was not. I have never been confused about right and wrong. That is how I ended up in a room with a nameplate on the table and a microphone in front of me, talking carefully to people in suits who asked hard questions while cameras watched. Lawyers watch me like hawks, but I am a bird too. I know how to sit on a wire and wait. In the end, there was a case. There was a settlement I cannot talk about because a judge said none of us can. There were reporters who used words like David and Goliath, which always makes me laugh because I am not a boy and they are not giants. We are just people with pencils trying to balance numbers on a line called fair. Then Linda got sick. The cameras stopped calling. I went quiet. I took care of her. After she passed, the quiet stayed. I never minded. Quiet is good medicine. So that is why my face was on Tyler's screen when he typed my name. That is why the room went silent. It is a strange thing, watching your family meet you again as if you were a stranger who walked into your own life. Now we return to that knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Mark stood. Who was that? I'll get it, I said, because the knock was not for my son, or for Susan, or for Tyler. It was for me. Some knocks carry a memory in the sound. They feel like an echo from years ago. That was this knock. And I knew, deep in my old bones, that this would not be a small moment. I walked down the hall, each step careful, each breath steady. The wooden floor creaked under the weight of years and secrets. My hand found the doorknob. Behind me, chairs scraped the floor, bodies leaned forward. A family held one breath together for the first time all day. I opened the door. On the porch stood 3 people in dark coats and badges on chains that caught the winter light. A black sedan idled at the curb. The woman in front looked me straight in the eyes with the kind of gaze that says she has driven all night for this and will drive all night again if she has to. Mr. Brooks, she said, voice firm and respectful. We need you to come with us. Right now. The hallway seemed to shrink. The cold air rushed past my ankles and curled around my legs like a cat. From the kitchen, I heard a fork drop and hit the tile. Tyler whispered, "What is happening?" I did not answer. I stood very still, like a tree against a hard wind. "Sir," the woman said, and her jaw tightened. "They found him." "Who?" Mark asked from behind me, stepping into the hall, eyes wide. The woman's gaze flicked to my son and back to me. "The man who tried to make your father disappear the first time," she said. "He's out. He's angry. And he's coming." The world narrowed to a small bright point. Old memories woke up like dogs in a yard, barking at the fence. I put one hand on the doorframe to steady myself. Behind me, my grandson, who had just called me useless, stood up so fast his chair fell backward and slammed the floor. "Grandpa," Tyler said, voice thin and scared for the first time that day. "What does she mean?" I turned my head just enough to see his face. He looked like a little boy again, not a teenager with a fast mouth and faster thumbs. I wanted to tell him everything right then. I wanted to tell him that kindness is power and that cruelty is a cheap shortcut that always makes you smaller. I wanted to tell him that the loudest tool in the room is not the strongest one, and that real strength is quiet and keeps its promises. But I did not have time for a sermon. The sedan's engine rumbled like a warning. Down the block, a second car turned the corner too fast, tires squealing, and the sound scraped my nerves like metal on metal. "Mr. Brooks," the woman said again, quick now. "We have to move." And right then, before I could step forward, before Mark could ask another question, before Susan could say, "What is going on?" a brick hit the front window with a shattering crash, exploding glass across the living room like ice. We all ducked. Tyler screamed. The woman pulled me by the elbow, strong, no hesitation. The brick rolled once on the rug and stopped against the leg of the coffee table. There was a note tied around it with red string. The paper was white and clean and ugly. The brick hit the window like a gunshot. Glass flew in every direction, tiny shining stars scattering across the floor. Everyone screamed, except me. I had heard that sound before. Not here, not in this life, but in another one, years ago. When the woman in the dark coat said, "He's coming," I already knew who she meant. And that brick was proof she wasn't lying. The note tied around it was folded neatly, almost politely, like a letter between friends. But the red string, it wasn't random. It was his sign, his way of saying, "I found you again." Mark rushed to pick up the note, but the woman stepped forward quickly. "Don't touch that," she said. "Let forensics handle it." Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted toward the street. She motioned to the two men behind her, who moved fast. One to the broken window, the other toward the door with his hand on his weapon. Tyler stood frozen beside the kitchen table, his face pale. "Grandpa, what's happening?" he whispered. I didn't answer. Because how do you explain to your grandson that before you were a gentle old man with a garden and a flip phone, you were a man someone once tried to destroy? The woman turned to me. "We need to go. Now." "Wait," Susan said sharply. "Go where? Who are you people?" The woman reached into her coat and flashed her badge. Federal Cybercrime Division. Then she looked at me. "You didn't tell them?" I sighed. "I told no one," I said quietly. Tyler's mouth fell open. "Cybercrime? Grandpa, what did you do?" I looked at him, at the boy who had just called me useless not 10 minutes earlier. Then I smiled, but there was no joy in it. "I told the truth, Tyler. And people who live on lies don't like truth tellers very much." Before anyone could say another word, the front door burst open. The agent who had been watching the window shouted, "Move. They're here." The woman grabbed my arm, but I shook her off. "Take them out the back," I said, pointing to my family. "Now, sir," I said, "take them." I barked, the old voice coming back, the one I hadn't used since my days testifying in front of those men who thought they owned the world. For a second, everyone just stared at me, because the trembling old man they knew wasn't standing there anymore. It was someone else, someone harder. Susan grabbed Tyler and Mark, dragging them toward the back door. The agents formed a line near the front, weapons drawn. Through the shattered window, a dark sedan had pulled up behind the federal car. Two men stepped out, one tall and bald, the other short and thick around the shoulders. They weren't hiding their faces. They didn't need to. The tall one looked right at me through the window, smiled, and lifted his hand slowly, like he was waving to an old friend. And then he mouthed one word. "Soon." The woman pushed me toward the back. "We have a car waiting at the alley." We ran through the kitchen and out the back door. The cold air bit at my face. I could hear the agents yelling behind us, hear tires screeching. Susan stumbled on the steps. Mark grabbed her arm. Tyler was crying now, but trying to hide it. I turned once before getting into the black SUV waiting behind the fence. Smoke rose from the front of the house. Something inside me twisted, the kind of pain that feels like memory and loss rolled into one. The agent shoved me into the back seat. "Go, go, go," she shouted to the driver. As the car sped down the alley, I looked out the window and saw flames licking up the side of the porch. They had thrown something through the window. They wanted to burn everything, to erase whatever proof was left. Tyler's voice trembled beside me. "Grandpa, who are they? Why are they doing this?" I stared out at the road, watching the city blur past. "Because," I said quietly, "I built something that helped people see the truth, and they built their world on lies." The car fell silent except for the sound of tires on wet pavement. After a long moment, Mark spoke. Dad, what kind of truth? I looked at him. My son, who had once asked me why I retired early, why I stopped going to conferences, why I sold our lake cabin when Linda got sick. I had lied back then. I said I wanted peace. But the truth was, peace was the only thing they couldn't buy from me. Before you were born, I began slowly. I worked on something the government didn't want the public to understand. A system that could track anyone, anywhere, just by their phone signal. They told us it was for safety, for national interest. But when I saw how it was being used, I trailed off, staring out at the rain-slicked road. I leaked part of it. To the press. To protect people. Tyler's mouth opened. You were a hacker? I chuckled softly. No, son. I was a mathematician. But the wrong equation in the right hands becomes a weapon. The SUV took a sharp turn onto a side road. The sirens behind us faded. The agent in the front turned slightly. We're heading to a safe location, sir. We'll brief you when we get there. Safe? I repeated under my breath. You've been saying that word for years. She didn't respond. Tyler reached out and touched my hand. Grandpa, he said softly, I'm sorry for what I said. I looked down at his hand, so small compared to mine, but trembling less now. Don't be sorry, I said. Be curious. The world always needs people who want to learn, not people who laugh first. He nodded, eyes wet. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Outside, the sky was gray and heavy. The fields rolled past in blur after blur. Then the driver's radio crackled. Agent Miller, we've got movement on Route 16. 2 black sedans following, 1 confirmed match. The woman, Miller, turned sharply. How close? Too close, the voice replied. Then hold on, she said, and hit the accelerator. The car lurched forward. Susan screamed, grabbing the seat. Tyler held onto my arm, and I pulled him close. Out the back window, the dark cars grew larger, closer every second. Mark looked at me. Dad, what do they want? Money? Revenge? No, I said quietly, watching the cars gain. They want silence. The first shot cracked through the air, shattering the back glass. Susan ducked. Tyler screamed. The SUV swerved, tires screeching. Miller shouted, everyone down. The driver jerked the wheel, turning sharply onto a dirt road that led into a forest. Mud splashed against the windows. The car bounced and jolted over roots and stones. The sedan behind us followed, headlights flashing through the trees. Get ready, Miller yelled to the other agent. He rolled down his window and fired 2 shots back. One hit the sedan's tire. The car swerved, but kept coming. I could feel Tyler shaking against my arm. Are we going to die? He whispered. I pulled him closer. Not today, I said. Another shot rang out. The driver cursed. The SUV fishtailed. Then the road split, a fork through the trees. Left, Miller yelled. But the driver didn't turn left. He went right. And that's when I saw it, the bridge. Old, wooden, narrow. The kind built for 1 car at a time, half rotted and slick with rain. Are you insane? Miller shouted. But it was too late. The SUV sped onto the bridge, boards creaking under its weight. Behind us, the sedan followed, tires spitting mud. Halfway across, I heard the worst sound in the world, wood splintering. The rear wheels dropped half an inch. The bridge groaned. Go, I yelled. The driver hit the gas. The engine roared. The SUV surged forward, and then the bridge gave out. The back end slammed down, throwing us forward. Tyler screamed. Susan hit her head on the seat. The SUV tilted dangerously, half on, half hanging. The other sedan stopped at the edge, headlights glaring through the rain. And then, silence. The car creaked. The air smelled of oil and fear. Mark whispered, Dad, what do we do? I looked through the broken back window, into the white beam of headlights and rain. A figure stepped out of the sedan. Tall, bald, the same man from my past. He smiled through the rain, pulled something from his coat, and raised it. A gun. The gun glinted in the rain. He stood there, calm, steady, like a man who had been waiting years for this moment. The same cold smile, the same sharp eyes I remembered from the courtroom decades ago. Back then, his name was hidden behind corporate lawyers and sealed documents. But I remembered his real one. Raymond Cole. He wasn't supposed to be alive. Miller shouted from the front seat. Everybody down. She fired through the broken back window. The gunshot echoed across the bridge, cracking through the storm. Raymond ducked behind his car. The SUV jolted. One of the back tires slipped an inch farther through the rotting boards. The bridge groaned like an old beast. Tyler screamed. Susan sobbed. Mark wrapped his arms around them both. The driver slammed the gear. We can't stay here. But Miller's voice cut through the chaos. If we move wrong, the bridge collapses. Rain pelted harder, cold and relentless. My hands were gripping the door so tight, I could feel the pulse in my wrist. I glanced out the shattered window. Below the bridge, a dark river foamed with white water. It looked hungry. Raymond shouted across the gap, his voice cutting through the storm. Come on, Walt. You didn't think you could hide forever, did you? Tyler looked at me, trembling. Grandpa, he knows your name. Yes, I said quietly. He knows a lot more than that. I pushed the door open. The agents yelled, but I ignored them. The car rocked dangerously as I stepped out onto the slick wood. Every creak under my boots reminded me the bridge wasn't meant to hold this long. The cold rain soaked my clothes, but I kept walking toward him. Slowly, deliberately. Walt, Miller shouted behind me. Get back in the car. But I didn't. Because this wasn't a fight for guns or safety anymore. This was a fight to end something that had been haunting me for 40 years. Raymond took a step forward too, holding the gun steady. You think this ends with another court hearing? He spat. You ruined everything. I lost everything because of you. You lost everything because you lied, I said. My voice was low but carried through the rain. You used my work to spy on people. You broke every rule we swore to protect. He sneered. You were naive. We kept the world safe. And what did you do? You turned the world against its own guardians. You think those settlements, those hush payments made you some kind of hero? I smiled sadly. No, but at least I sleep at night. His face twisted, rage bubbling beneath the calm. You should have stayed buried, old man. He lifted the gun, but before he could pull the trigger, the bridge shuddered violently. One of the beams beneath us cracked, splitting with a loud snap. Both of us froze. Walt, Miller shouted. Get back. It's collapsing. Raymond stumbled, his foot slipping on the slick wood. The gun fired. Once, the bullet whistled past my shoulder, missing by inches. Then the bridge gave out. The SUV tilted forward. Screams filled the air. Miller grabbed Susan and Tyler as the car started sliding toward the edge. The tires scraped wood, sparks flying. Hold on, Mark shouted, his hand reaching for the door. I turned back just as the back half of the bridge crumbled. The SUV plunged nose first, crashing into the water below with a thunderous splash. No, I yelled. Miller's voice came through the radio crackle as the car disappeared beneath the surface. Whir, then static. I ran to the edge, peering down into the rushing current. Bubbles, wood, and broken planks swirled where the car had fallen. Raymond staggered to his feet on the other side, coughing, the gun still in his hand. See what you've done, Walt? You destroy everything you touch. I glared at him, rain streaking my face. Not everything. Not today. He smirked. You really think they'll survive that drop? I didn't answer. I dove. The freezing water hit like knives. My body screamed in shock. I kicked hard, eyes stinging, following the trail of bubbles and broken glass. Below, the SUV glowed faintly from its headlights. The windshield was cracked. I saw movement inside, Tyler's hand pressed against the glass. I swam harder, lungs burning. My fingers brushed the handle. Locked. I yanked. Nothing. I pulled out the small metal pen I always carried, the same one I used to sign my last court document years ago. I jammed it into the corner of the window and slammed my elbow into it. The glass shattered in a rush of bubbles. Cold water flooded in. I grabbed Tyler first, pushing him out through the opening. Then Susan. Then Mark. Miller followed, coughing as she kicked free. When we reached the surface, the rain had turned to hail. Sharp and merciless. Mark gasped. Dad, where's Tyler? I turned and saw him clinging to a floating plank, eyes wide, calling my name. I'm here. I swam toward him, grabbed his arm, and pulled him close. He was shaking violently, teeth chattering. We all clung to a large beam from the bridge as the current carried us downstream. The forest blurred by. Miller coughed, holding her radio above the water. Base, this is Agent Miller. Brooks is secure, under attack. We need. Static swallowed her voice. The current slammed us against a pile of branches near the bank. I pushed Tyler up first, then Susan, then Mark. Then I hauled myself out, soaked, breathless, heart pounding. For a few seconds, we just lay there on the mud, gasping. The rain finally softened to a mist. Miller stood up, still breathing hard. We need to move. If he followed us, he'll track the river. They'll send more. I looked down the river, the dark shape of the broken bridge fading in the distance. Raymond's car was gone. So was he. Tyler turned to me, dripping and terrified. Grandpa, who was that man? I met his eyes. The reason your grandmother died scared every night. The words came out before I could stop them. The air went still. Even the rain seemed to pause. Mark looked up sharply. What? I sat down slowly on the wet ground. My bones ached, but the ache inside was worse. After the trial, I began. When I refused to sign another non-disclosure deal, they came after us. Linda started getting calls at night. Threats. Strange cars parked outside. One evening, she didn't come home from the grocery store. Susan gasped. They found her car, I said quietly. Empty. Keys still in the ignition. The case went cold. I knew who was behind it, but I couldn't prove it. And now, I looked toward the dark woods. Now he's back. Miller put a hand on my shoulder. Then we make sure he doesn't get another chance. Lightning flashed far away, lighting up the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an engine started. We froze. Move, Miller whispered. Now. We ran through the trees, our shoes squelching in the mud, hearts pounding in rhythm with the thunder. Tyler clung to my hand as we pushed through the brush. The headlights appeared again, sweeping across the woods like a predator's eyes. And then we heard his voice. Calm. Mocking. Echoing through the rain. You can run, Walt, but you know I always find you. Tyler gripped my hand tighter. Grandpa, are we going to make it? I looked at him, the boy who had once called me useless, and felt something fierce rise in me. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Because this time, I'm not running alone. The headlights grew closer. The sound of tires crunching gravel grew louder. And right then, a figure stepped out from behind a tree ahead of us. Gun raised. But it wasn't Raymond. It was a face I hadn't seen in 40 years. A face I thought was dead. For a long, frozen second, I couldn't breathe. The beam of the flashlight cut through the misty rain, landing on the man's face, pale, soaked, and impossibly familiar. It was Calvin Hart, once my best friend, my partner, the only man I trusted back when all of this began, and the same man who betrayed me. The light trembled in his hand as his eyes met mine. His expression was unreadable, part sorrow, part guilt, part something darker. Hello, Walt, he said quietly, his voice gravelly from age. Miller aimed her gun instantly. Hands where I can see them, she barked. Calvin lifted them slowly. Easy now. I'm not here to fight. Then why are you here? I said, my voice low and cold. He gave a half smile that looked more like regret. To finish what we started. Susan held Tyler behind her, shaking. Mark stepped forward. Dad, who is this? I stared at Calvin for a long time before answering. The man who helped me build the system that ruined our lives. Tyler blinked, confused. You mean he worked with you? Calvin nodded. I did more than work with him. I wrote half of the code. Miller kept her weapon trained. Then you're coming with us. But Calvin didn't flinch. If you walk out of these woods now, you'll all be dead before sunrise. Is that a threat? Miller snapped. He shook his head. It's a warning. Raymond's not alone this time. You think he came after you himself, Walt? He's working with what's left of the old committee. The ones who built the second system. I froze. The second one? Calvin nodded grimly. After you testified and shut them down, they started again under a new name, new company, same faces. I left when I realized what they planned. But Raymond, he stayed. They've been watching you ever since. Why come now? I asked. Because, Calvin said, his voice low, your name went live again last week. Someone leaked your sealed testimony online. Every group you embarrassed, every person you exposed, they know you're alive. And they're not just coming for you. They're coming for the files. I frowned. Files? Calvin gave a thin smile. Don't play dumb, old friend. You still have them. Behind me, Mark looked puzzled. What files? I hesitated. Rain dripped from my hair, running down my face. When Linda went missing, I swore I'd never touch that hard drive again. I buried it, literally, in a safety vault under my old workshop. But the truth has a strange way of clawing its way back to daylight. The proof, I said finally. Everything they did. The contracts, the hidden payments, the list of people they tracked illegally. All of it. Calvin stepped closer, lowering his voice. And now Raymond wants it destroyed. Before I could reply, A gunshot rang out, loud, close. The bullet hit the tree right beside Calvin's head, sending bark flying. He ducked. Miller turned instantly, firing 2 shots back toward the sound. "Go," she shouted. "Move." We scrambled through the trees, slipping on the wet ground. Tyler clung to my hand. Susan stumbled, and Mark grabbed her arm. Bullets sliced through the branches. Sparks of wood and dirt sprayed around us. Calvin was running beside me now. "There's an old ranger cabin half a mile east. We can reach it through the ridge." Miller hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way." We sprinted through the forest, hearts pounding, the rain masking the sound of our footsteps. Behind us, Raymond's men shouted orders. Flashlights danced through the trees like hunting dogs closing in on a scent. When we finally broke through the clearing, I saw it, a small wooden cabin, half collapsed, its roof sagging under years of moss. Calvin kicked the door open. "In quick." We stumbled inside. The smell of damp wood and mold filled the air. Dust covered the furniture like snow. Miller checked the windows while the others caught their breath. Tyler sat on the floor, his face pale. "Are we safe here?" "For a few minutes," Calvin said, pulling the curtains shut. "But they'll find us. They always do." I turned to him. "You never told me you were still in touch with them." "I wasn't," he said bitterly. "Until last week. Raymond came to my house. Said if I didn't help him find you, he'd go after my daughter." I frowned. "You have a daughter?" He nodded slowly. "She's 18. Just started college. She doesn't even know who I was before. I couldn't let him near her. So I told him I'd track you. But instead, I came here first. To warn you." Miller eyed him suspiciously. "How do we know you're not leading him straight to us?" "You don't," he said simply. "But if I wanted Walt dead, he'd already be lying in that river." The silence that followed was heavy. Only the ticking of rain against the windows filled the air. Finally, I said, "You said they're after the files. Then we'll make sure they never get them." Calvin looked up. "What are you planning?" I sat down at the old wooden table and exhaled slowly. "The files are in a buried safe under my workshop in Brooksville. But if we go back, we'll lead them straight to it." Miller crossed her arms. "Then we fake them out. Leak something false." Calvin smirked. "They won't fall for that. They'll want the physical proof, the drives, the signatures." I turned to him. "Then we give them something real enough to chase." He blinked. "You mean bait?" "Yes," I said. "Let them come for me." Mark slammed his hand on the table. "Dad, are you crazy? They just tried to kill us." I met his eyes. "They won't stop, son. Not until I finish this. I spent my life running from the mess I made. But I'm done hiding. I'm not afraid anymore." Tyler spoke softly. "But Grandpa, you'll get hurt." I smiled faintly. Sometimes, doing the right thing hurts. But running from it hurts worse. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Miller sighed. "Fine. But if we do this, we do it smart. I'll call in backup." Calvin shook his head. "No backup. If they know the feds are involved, they'll vanish. We need to play this quietly." Mark frowned. "How do we even start?" Calvin's eyes shifted toward me. "By digging up what he buried." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky again. The sound rumbled through the cabin walls like the growl of something old and angry. Miller looked out the window. "We move at first light." We sat in silence after that. The exhaustion hit all at once. Tyler leaned against me, his head on my arm. Susan dozed off beside him. But I couldn't sleep. My mind kept returning to one image, Linda's smile. Her voice that night before she disappeared. "Promise me," she had said softly, "you won't let them win." I never did. Not yet. When dawn finally came, pale and gray, we left the cabin. The forest steamed from the night's rain. The air was heavy with dew and the smell of earth. Calvin led the way. Miller followed, gun ready. We walked until the trees thinned and a rusted sign came into view. "Brooksville" for miles. Tyler squeezed my hand. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "what happens when we get there?" I looked at the horizon, where the road curved toward the town I swore I'd never return to. I took a breath. "Then," I said, "we end this for good." But just as we reached the clearing where my old workshop once stood, we froze. Because someone was already there. The door was open, the lock broken, and on the dirt, half buried in mud and leaves, was the one thing I feared most. Linda's wedding ring. Still shining. Still warm. The ring glimmered faintly in the morning light, resting on the wet ground like a whisper from the dead. I dropped to my knees. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. brushing off the mud that clung to the small gold band. The tiny engraving inside, LB to WB, forever true, was still there. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a ring. It was a message. Miller crouched beside me, her voice low. You said she was gone, that they never found her. They didn't, I said, staring at the ring. Until now. Calvin's face went pale. They want you to know they have her. I looked up sharply. Don't, I said. She's been gone 40 years. Calvin hesitated. Walt, what if she wasn't? The words hit me harder than the ring. Mark stepped forward, confused and scared. Dad, what does that mean? Calvin rubbed his face, his voice grim. You don't understand how far the committee went. Back then, they didn't just kill their problems, they erased them. Faked deaths, planted records, hid people in new identities. They had funding from black-budget programs no one was supposed to see. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. You're saying Linda might still be alive? He met my eyes. I'm saying it's possible. Miller's radio crackled. Unit Bravo, 6 checking in, coordinates compromised. Multiple vehicles inbound. Damn, she muttered. They're close. I clenched the ring in my fist and stood. Then we don't run. We finish this. Calvin frowned. Walt. I turned to him. You said they want the files. Fine. They'll get them. But we're going to make sure the whole world sees them first. Miller blinked. You mean, release them publicly? I nodded. Every document, every signature, every contract they buried. Let them try to hide once the truth is out. Mark stepped closer, his voice trembling. Dad, if you do that, they'll come after all of us. They already have, I said softly. The sound of engines echoed in the distance. Multiple vehicles, fast and heavy. Miller grabbed her weapon. Positions. Move. We ducked into the shadows of the workshop ruins. The old building stood half-broken, the roof sagging, the air thick with the smell of oil and dust. The computers I once used were long gone, but the trapdoor under the floor was still there, hidden beneath the old tool bench. I knelt, pushing away the rotten boards until I saw the steel lockbox buried in the dirt. My heart pounded. My hands shook as I entered the code, my anniversary date. It clicked open. Inside was a small metal drive, wrapped in a piece of faded cloth. Linda's handwriting was still on it. Keep this safe. I stared at it, swallowing the lump in my throat. You kept your promise, Linda, I whispered. Now it's my turn. Calvin crouched beside me. That's it. That tiny thing. Every lie they ever told. I said. Outside, tires screeched. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. Miller peered through the cracks. 4 vehicles. 10, maybe 12 men. Arm. Raymond? I asked. She nodded grimly. Front car. Tyler grabbed my sleeve. Grandpa, we can't fight them. I turned, placing the drive in his hand. You're right. That's why you're going to run. He froze. What? Take your mom and dad. Go out the back, through the creek. Follow it until you reach the main road. There's an old radio tower. Signal from there. They'll find you. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. But what about you? I smiled sadly. Don't worry about me. I've been running long enough. Mark grabbed my arm. Dad, no. Go. I snapped. The door at the front burst open. Raymond's voice filled the air. Well, Walt. You always did know how to make an entrance. Miller fired first. The blast echoed through the room. Bullets tore through the walls. Dust and wood splinters exploded around us. Move, she shouted. Mark pulled Susan and Tyler toward the back door. Calvin followed, covering them. I ducked behind a steel cabinet, firing one of the pistols Miller had handed me earlier. Raymond laughed from outside. You really think you can win this, old man? You can't fight time. I peeked out and fired again, hitting one of his men in the leg. I don't need time, I said. I just need the truth. The firefight raged. Miller was hit in the shoulder, but kept firing, gritting her teeth. Calvin returned, dragging Tyler back inside. They're flanking from the creek. Take him out the side window. Miller yelled. Calvin nodded, smashing the glass. Tyler climbed out, but before Calvin could follow, a figure appeared at the window. Linda, alive, soaked, trembling, but unmistakably her. Her hair was gray now, her eyes hollow but sharp. She wore a dark jacket, mud streaked on her face. Walt, she said softly, tears in her eyes. It's really me. For a second, I couldn't move. My mind refused to believe what my eyes saw. Linda, I whispered. How? Raymond's voice boomed behind her. Beautiful reunion, isn't it? He shoved her forward with the barrel of his gun pressed against her back. Step away from the boy, Walt. Miller aimed, but I raised my hand. No, don't shoot. Raymond smirked. You know, I should have killed her when I had the chance. But I figured one day, I might need a leash. Linda looked at me, her voice trembling. Walt, I tried to get away. They kept me hidden all these years. Please, let her go, I said. Raymond shook his head. Give me the drive. I hesitated. Tyler still had it. He was crouched behind the bench, eyes wide. Raymond saw the movement. Ah, there it is. He stepped closer, pressing the gun harder into Linda's back. Slide it over, or she dies. Tyler started crying. Grandpa, don't, I said softly. Miller whispered. Walt, we don't have a shot. I lifted my hand slowly, stepping forward. My eyes locked on Raymond's. You always wanted the last word, didn't you? He grinned. You know me too well. Yeah, I said quietly. I do. I took one more step forward and pressed a button on my watch. Outside, a small drone hidden under the workbench beeped once. Then twice. Raymond frowned. What the hell? Before he could finish, the side of the workshop exploded. The shockwave threw us all to the ground. Fire and dust filled the air. The walls groaned, half collapsing. I rolled over, coughing, ears ringing. Through the smoke, I saw Tyler crawling toward the back door with the drive still clutched in his hand. Raymond was on the ground, blood on his face, trying to lift his gun. And Linda, she was lying beside me, eyes open but unfocused. I crawled to her, grabbing her hand. Linda, stay with me. She blinked weakly, a faint smile forming. You always were stubborn. Her hand squeezed mine once, then went still. No, I screamed, pulling her close. Miller staggered up, limping toward me. Walt, we have to move. But I didn't move. I just held her. The rain began again, falling through the broken roof, washing the dust from her face. Behind me, Raymond groaned, dragging himself toward his gun. You think this ends with me? He spat, coughing blood. You think one upload changes the world? I looked at him through tears. No, I said, but it'll change yours. Tyler's small voice came from behind the flames. Grandpa, it's uploading. Raymond froze. What? Tyler held up Linda's drive, connected to Miller's laptop. The bar on the screen was almost full. Raymond screamed and reached for his gun. I grabbed the fallen pistol beside me and fired. The bullet hit him in the chest. He stumbled, choking, eyes wide with shock. He fell backward into the flames, and the fire swallowed him whole. The upload bar blinked, 100%, and then the laptop beeped, data broadcast complete. The truth was out. Miller limped to the door. Walt, we have to go before this whole place collapses. I looked one last time at Linda's still face. Then I kissed her forehead, whispered, I did it, sweetheart, and stood up. As we ran into the rain, the workshop behind us exploded a second time. Brighter, louder, final. Flames rose high against the gray sky. And for the first time in 40 years, I felt free. But as the sirens grew louder in the distance, and the smoke curled into the morning air, I didn't see the shadow that moved among the trees. Someone watching, waiting, and holding a phone, recording everything. The flames painted the sky orange as we stumbled through the wet grass, coughing and shivering. The smell of smoke clung to everything, our clothes, our skin, even the air we breathed. Behind us, the workshop collapsed in on itself with a roar, sending sparks into the mist. Miller pressed her radio to her mouth, voice raw. This is Agent Miller. Operation complete. Target neutralized. Send medical evac to coordinates. Static cut her off. The line was dead. We were on our own again. Tyler held onto my coat, his little body trembling from the cold and fear. His face was smeared with soot, his eyes wide and haunted. Grandpa, is she gone? He whispered. I swallowed hard. The question sliced through me. Yeah, I said softly. She's gone. He nodded slowly, tears mixing with rain. She said your name before she fell. I think she was waiting for you. That broke something in me I didn't know was still whole. I looked back at the burning ruins where Linda had taken her last breath. 40 years of silence, fear, and guilt, all gone in a single hour. And still, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a graveyard. Calvin limped toward us, face covered in ash. The upload worked. It's everywhere now. News networks, private feeds, even the dark web. They can't bury it again. Miller looked up from checking her wound. Then we did it. No, I said quietly. We survived. There's a difference. She frowned. You think they'll come after you again? I met her eyes. The truth doesn't end enemies. It just exposes them. She didn't argue. She just nodded, as if she already knew. We reached the road, a long, empty stretch of asphalt surrounded by pine trees and fog. In the distance, sirens echoed faintly. Maybe police. Maybe someone else. Mark and Susan stumbled out from the woods, drenched and pale. Mark's hands were shaking. Dad, I saw the explosion. I thought you were. I'm fine, I said, though every inch of me hurt. Where's Tyler? Tyler stepped forward. I have it, he said, holding up the flash drive like it was sacred. I didn't let go. I smiled weakly. Good man. Susan wrapped her arms around him, sobbing quietly. We stood there for a long time, listening to the rain and the far-off sirens. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Finally, Miller broke the silence. We'll get you into witness protection again, Walt. New name, new life. You can start over. I shook my head slowly. No, I'm done hiding. The world knows my name now, let them. She studied me for a moment, then sighed. You're a stubborn old man. I smiled faintly. You have no idea. Calvin looked down the road. I have a safe house up north. Quiet place. We can rest a few days before deciding the next move. Mark nodded. We'll follow you. As we walked, the morning light began to break through the smoke, a pale, cold sun cutting through the fog. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Not the kind that comes from safety, but the kind that comes when you finally stop running from your own past. Tyler walked beside me, clutching my hand. Grandpa, yes, son. I looked up your name again, he said softly. On my phone. You're everywhere. People are calling you a hero. I chuckled quietly. Hero's just a word people use when they don't know how scared you were. He looked up at me with a small, hesitant smile. I'm proud of you. Those words hit deeper than any bullet ever could. I squeezed his hand. And I'm proud of you, too. You were brave today. He grinned, though his lips trembled. Do you think Grandma's watching us? I looked at the horizon, where the smoke curled into the sky. Yeah, I whispered. I think she is. We reached Calvin's truck parked near the old ranger station. It was rusted, dented, and smelled like oil, but it started on the first try. Everyone piled in. Miller sat in the front seat, radioing whoever might still be listening. I sat in the back with Tyler, staring out the window as the burning field faded from view. The farther we drove, the quieter it got. The trees blurred past like ghosts of everything we'd lost. But just when I thought it was over, Calvin's phone buzzed on the dashboard. He frowned, picked it up, and froze. What is it? Miller asked. He turned the screen toward me. It was a video, grainy, shaky, clearly filmed from a distance. The timestamp read 3 minutes ago. The footage showed us standing by the road after the explosion. The camera zoomed in on me, then on Tyler, holding the drive. And then a voice spoke behind the camera. Calm, cold. Old men die, but legacies live. And sometimes, legacies have children. The video cut off. The truck fell silent. Miller cursed under her breath. Someone's still out there. Calvin's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. They're watching us. Mark looked back at me, terrified. Dad, what does that mean? I stared out the window as the road curved north, disappearing into the woods. It means, I said quietly, the game isn't over. Tyler leaned against me, shivering. Will they come for me now? I looked down at him, my grandson, who just days ago thought I was useless. The boy who now held the one thing that could change the world. I brushed the dirt from his hair and said, they can try. The truck sped into the mist. Behind us, a lone drone hovered silently in the treetops, red light blinking. Watching, recording, waiting. The world finally knew who Walter Brooks was. But the men who built their empire on lies. They weren't done yet. And neither was I.